Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. I'm meadsyreplays. Welcome back to the channel. In today's video, we are going to be playing and looking at the WZ113. Now, our previous videos of the tank was nothing special. Like, the tank is nothing special. And it really was about DPM, because that is really all the tank has been known by over the years, because of the crazy DPM for a heavy tank that this tank has got. But we're going to revisit the tank, and is that all what this tank is worth? Is it all just about DPM? Because playing the tank, I don't think it's all just about DPM. There are other aspects of the tank that are still really good. Do I think it could be better? Of course, I do think it can be better, but it isn't just about DPM with this tank. So you've got the turret. Absolutely strong turret. I mean, 275 millimeters on the turret is very strong indeed. So if you can get it on a hold down, then do so. Now, the only negative thing about it being in a hold down position is the gun depression, which we will get to. Your hull armor is very weak at 125. So yeah, it's got no hull armor, but a very strong turret. Now, the DPM for this tank is just over 3,000 with calibrated shells. So you can get that up for a couple hundred more if you just run it with the rammer. But I think it needs that calibrated shells. Obviously, I've started running calibrated shells on almost every tank that I have. So yeah, 3,000 is still decent with that calibrated shells. That is just a reload of 7.8 seconds. So for a heavy tank, very short reload indeed. Your penetration 272 on your APCR, and running calibrated shells with this pushes your pen up to 390, which is very good for a heavy tank, and 73 on your HE. So yeah, not the best, but you know, 73 isn't bad at all. You've got a 400 alpha gun, 360 on your heat, and 490 on your HE. Aim time 3 seconds, gun dispersion 0.344, and of course your gun depression is just 6 degrees. So if you can get on a ridge, you will struggle because of that poor gun depression. Your top speed is 45 kilometers per hour. So I do think it has more to it than just the DPM, because you know, it can still cause damage, of course, because the DPM. You can still get block damage because of the armor. But you don't want this tank to be sat on flat ground without any cover, because that is really where you will struggle, because yeah, frontally, it doesn't have any armor at all. The traverse is quite slow for what it is as well. I mean, the track traverse, turret traverse, they are very slow. So if a medium or light tank decides to circle you, you will pay the price, and they will be able to circle you quite easily. So do bear that in mind. But yeah, you know, you have to try and get on a ridge, of course, because you have that insane turret. 275 millimeters of turret armor. Honestly, that is very strong. The way I like to play it, I don't really like to go with the heavies, to be fair. And that is just because of the armor. I do like to go kind of with your medium tanks, because you pretty much equal not equal, but if you're running it with the rammer, for example, you'd have just as much DPM than some of the mediums out there. But you have that little bit of armor, which you can get bounces. So hopefully these two games, I've got one game from me and another game from a subscriber, not the best of damage in the world, but you'll just see it's not just about DPM. If it was just about DPM, you'd be seeing 7,000-8,000 battles, damage battles, sorry, every single time. But I've decided not to use the real high damage battles, because as I said, I don't want it to be just about DPM. It is an all-rounder tank, and it used to be very popular amongst the tournament scene, and you know, rightly so. But obviously things change, tanks change, they become weaker, they become sort of, they get rebalanced, and yeah, some tanks really do suffer the price. and I think this has sort of suffered the price over the years. It definitely isn't as popular as it once was. Now, a lot of that isn't just the tank itself. I think it's generally the line, the tech tree as well. I don't think the tech tree is the most exciting tech tree, and people really don't want to play it. And that's the same with the WZ113G FT, the tank destroyer. I've made numerous of videos about that, explaining like why I love the tank and why it is so good, but yet it's the least popular tier 10, and it always has been. And a lot of that really isn't just about the tank. And you know, just because a tier 10 tech tree tank is never really played, you can't sit there and say it must be a bad tank. But I think a lot of that will have to do with the tech tree line as well. You know, some lines are better than others. Some tech tree lines have fantastic tanks leading up to the tier 10, and then the tier 10 is just like, yeah. But there's some tanks where the tech tree line is absolutely dog shit, but yet the tier 10 is absolutely amazing. Take the E3, for example, you know, the line leading up to it, not so fun. Of course, you have the T95, but once you get to the tier 10, then it is all worthwhile. And this time, I should imagine, is the same with the WZ113. It's not played half as much as it used to be, and I honestly think nowadays it probably is one of the least played tier 10s. It's a tier 10 you do see regularly. Of course, you see most tier 10, especially when it comes to tech trees, you see most tier 10s regularly, but I just think that you see this a lot less than you used to before, because people just used to play it mainly because of that DPM, because of how crazy the DPM used to be. But I still think it's definitely a tank that is going to get better. I do think it will get better over time, and of course we do have the rebalancing coming up. I'm not going to talk about the rebalancing at the moment, because obviously we're reviewing the tanks as they are now. Once they are rebalanced, we will again look back at these tanks and think, is it a better tank or is it much worse? We will look at that in the coming future. But for now, I think it's still a very good tank when put in the right situation. And again, if you're on a bit of flat ground, then yeah, you're going to get absolutely torn apart. And yes, you're going to probably have more DPM than the tank opposite you, but you're not going to have as good armor. You're not going to have as good speed. You're not going to have as good traverse or turret traverse or track traverse. But you do have the turret armor, and if you can hide your hull, I mean, look at this guy here. He's just bounced the Death Star because of the position. I mean, I know he's on sort of a flat bit of ground here, but because he's raised up, that Death Star couldn't see his hull. He can only see his turret, and yeah, nice and easy bounce from that turret. So the armor profile can work, and it does work, but you just need to be in that right position for that armor to work. But yeah, the DPM obviously really does help. I think if the DPM was any lower than it is, then we'd probably be calling this a really poor tank. I know there are people out there that call it a poor tank anyway. But I honestly think it's a decent tank. It is a good tank. It can be very, very dangerous. And a lot of that, yes, has to do with that DPM, because it is crazy. It's still good DPM for a tier 10 heavy tank. So let me know your thoughts. What do you think of the WZ113? Do you play it just for the DPM, or do you play it for any other aspects of the tank? And again, the turret is a big thing as well. Without that turret, again, not just about the DPM, but you remove the turret armor on this thing, then yeah, it probably becomes a lot poorer. It won't be half exciting than it is now. But as it is now, I still think it is a good tank. It's not a brilliant tank. I think it's a good tank that, put in the right positioning, can be very, very brutal. So let me know your thoughts on the WZ113 in the comments below. But for now, I hope you enjoyed today's video. I'm meadsy69, and I'll catch you all soon. Bye-bye.